Hello everyone, and welcome back to Void Dwarf Studios, where today we look into Stormcast named characters. I will be skipping a couple here as there were some web exclusives, some store exclusive characters who don't feature very prominently in the Stormcaste Eternal Battle Tome, but I will make a separate video for them, mostly because these are the characters that you can find in your Stormcast Battle Tome, and the others are variations on characters who already exist that aren't named. Various Knight Questers, Lord Celestants, that kind of thing. And these are the characters who actually have a backstory, or at least more of a backstory, shall we say. Because some of them are, well, some of the web exclusive ones are like 1 or 2 line sentences, so there's not a whole lot I can make out of that. But first up, we're going to start with Steelheart's Champions, led by Severin Steelheart, a group of liberators who were sent to the city of Shadespire to discover the properties of its namesake, the Shadespire glass, the substance that can hold souls, which I mentioned previously in a Nighthaunt video. Along with his 2 companions, Oberyn and Agarad, these 3 liberators entered the city mostly by accident, ironically, and became trapped within the various labyrinths, mazes, curses and illusions. Discovering that only one of them could escape thanks to the magical means of protecting the city from intruders, they decided instead to take various caches of the Shadespire glass and send it to the outside world instead. Essentially, they would remain within Shadespire as guards and fight off the various undead denizens that try to bring them down. Because of this, their fellowship together is unbreakable, and when they work in unison there are few who can match them. The Steelheart Champions have to be fielded as a group of 3 in your tabletop games, as these guys are typically used for, well, Shadespire, which has a completely different set of rules. But essentially, Severin Steelheart is armed with a broadsword, you have Oberon the Bold, who is armed with the Grand Hammer, and Agaran Bright Shield, who is armed with a Warhammer and Sigmarite Shield. And the stats for these characters are pretty good. They all have Bravery 7, 2 wounds, 5 move, and a 4+ save. Pretty standard Liberator fare, and Severin's broadsword has 3 attacks, hitting on 3s and wounding on 4s, with a -1 rend and 2 damage. Not half bad. Oberon's Grand Hammer has 2 attacks, so little less, but hitting on 4s, wounding on 3s, -1 rend and 3 damage. So a little harder to hit, but does more damage on the output. And Agarad's Warhammer does 3 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, no rend but 1 damage. So she's pretty consistent. But you take these 3 liberators because of their abilities. Otherwise, they're just bog standard liberators with a slightly better profile. Severin Steelheart. If Severin Steelheart is targeting a unit with 5 or more models, he gets to reroll his attacks with his broadsword. Not half bad. Rerolls are always lovely. The Heroic Guard ability means that if 1 or more enemy units finishes a charge within half an inch of your Steelheart Champions, they can do what's called a Heroic Guard. What this means is they add 1 to their saving throws for any attacks that are coming against them. The downside is you do not benefit from cover, but as a good chunk of the time you're not going to be in cover, you're still going to get a decent save. 3+ is nothing to sniff at. Lay Low the Tyrant means that you get to add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made against enemy units with 5 or more wounds. So yeah, if you're fighting a monster, you have a better chance of hitting it, which is fantastic. So really you need to fight a unit with with 5 or more wounds and 5 or more models, which means you're re-rolling your hits multiple times over. And with Sigmarite Shield, meaning you can re-roll saving throws of 1 for attacks that target this unit so long as Agarad is alive. So all these abilities combined mean that the Steelheart Champions are a fairly decent close combat unit. I would suggest using them closely together, gang up on a character and they'll bludgeon the poor unfortunate soul to smithereens, or put them up against a monster and they stand a relatively good chance of doing some damage. And then you have another denizen who came walking into the dark enchantments of the Night Vault. Averon Stormsire, a knight incanter of considerable age and proficiency when it comes to removing enchantments, curses and breaking of runes. This individual was sent into Night Vault to discover its various secrets and find a way to cleanse it, along with his 2 companions. a group of evocators known as Amis and Rastus. Averon Stormsire has a pretty decent profile for a Knight Incanter. 9 bravery, 5 wounds, 5 move, and 3+ save. His Incanter staff has 3 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, -1 rend and D3 damage. Staves are always wonderful, especially when they wound so easily. He has the standard Spirit Flask, you know, the thing where you can chuck 1, 2 or 3 of them. You take mortal wounds, but you can also do a mortal wound to an enemy within 3 inches, or D3 if there are 10 or more models. Just don't use all 3 in one go, because there's a fairly good chance, especially if you're fighting against a group of 10 or more models, that you're just going to outright kill him. He has the standard Void Storm Scroll, meaning he can just say nope to a magic phase. And of course, as he's a wizard, he can cast a spell a turn, having access to Arcane Bolt and Mystic Shield, but in addition he has his special spell, the Stormsire. Casting value of 7, if successfully cast, each enemy unit within 18 inches suffers a mortal wound. Enemy units within 6 take D3 wounds instead. In addition, you subtract 1 from run and charge rolls for enemy units whilst they're within 18 inches of the caster. So yeah, he does mortal wounds, he does more mortal wounds the closer you are to him, and he slows down the enemy's advance. And charge capabilities. That's not half bad at all. Like, the warband is worth it just for this. And the Stormsire Curse Breakers, the name he's given his little troop, are pretty decent as evocators go. Bravery of 8, 3 wounds, 5 move, 4+ save. Armed with their Tempest Blades and Storm Staves, they each have 5 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, -1 rend and 1 damage. Pretty damn tasty. Blessed Banishment means they get to reroll hit rolls of 1 for attacks made against anything with the Chaos or Death keyword. Celestial Lightning Arc means that you get to reroll save rolls of 1 for missile attacks coming in at you, and on top of that you get that lovely ability where you pick an enemy unit within 3 inches and you roll 2 dice for each model in the unit. On a 4+, that model takes a mortal wound. So yeah, don't target guns at these things, unless you want your frontline troops to start taking damage. And of course, they're wizards. They can cast 1 spell a turn, although it's only the Empower spell. Cast on a 6, if successfully cast you pick a friendly Redeemer or Sacrosanct unit within 12 inches, and they get to reroll failed wound rolls for attacks. Pretty damn decent. I would say this is a fairly decent choice to take for your army, if only for the Empower rerolls, plus that Stormsire spell that Averon has is pretty handy. It will slow the enemy down and do mortal wounds. And mortal wounds are hilarious. Always hilarious. Averon and the Curse Breakers are going to be wandering around and doing all kinds of awesome stuff for some time to come, I imagine. Right, now we start to get into the individual heroes. And first we have Knave Black Talon, a Knight Zephyros of considerable skill, renowned for being so fast that she disappears into almost a bolt of lightning and capable of riding the etheric trails of the Griff Chargers, a not inconsiderable ability, and thanks to her speed she's been known to slay many a Orc Warlord, Chaos Champion, anything that gets in her way, and with a respectable profile she's more than capable of doing it. 9 bravery, 6 wounds, a 6-inch move and a 3+ save means she's going to weather some firepower at her. She has her Bolt Storm pistol, which is 9-inch range, 2 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, and 1 damage. But you take her because of the Whirlwind Axes. 7 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, -1 rend and 1 damage. And her abilities just make her all the more tasty. Lightning Fast Strikes mean you add 1 to your attack characteristics of your Whirlwind Axes on the turn you charge, so now you have 8 attacks. Tireless Hunter means you can run and shoot, meaning you always get to shoot your pistol all the time. You add 1 to the damage characteristic of your model's weapons thanks to the Nemesis ability, if you are targeting a hero to be fair. And Wind Rider means she can basically follow the Griff Chargers wherever she wants. When a friendly Stormcaste Eternal unit within 9 inches of this model uses the Ride the Winds ability, the Griff Chargers from the Vanguard detachment as I've previously mentioned, this model can follow them in their wake. You immediately move this model up to the distance moved by the unit they are following, and this model can end its movement within 9 inches of the model that used the ability Ride the Winds, and 3 inches away from the enemy. Whilst you cannot use this ability to then subsequently charge, it does mean you have a great degree of flexibility as to where you want her. Bearing in mind she can run and shoot, this makes her fantastic for getting across the battlefield really fast, especially when you want her to bludgeon a poor unfortunate enemy unconscious. She is a pretty damn decent character killer, with 8 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, and 2 damage apiece with -1 rend. Yeah, that's gonna leave a mark. That's gonna definitely leave a mark on most characters. Even monsters are gonna struggle against her. And next up we have Gabriel Sureheart, a mortal who grew up as a slave in a Cornite fortress. He led a rebellion where he was able to slay the king, although unfortunately not able to escape. But before he was executed for his rather impulsive rebellion, he was saved by Sigmar, who reforged him. And after some time serving amongst the Stormcaste Eternals, he was granted the rank of Lord Celestant. Taking his not inconsiderable experience in the gladiatorial arena, Gabriel Sureheart is a vengeful person who is more than happy to go into the mortal realms and lay the smackdown. He is pretty damn good in close combat. 9 bravery, 5 wounds, 5 move and a 3-up save, and armed with the Starbound Blade, he has 3 attacks that hit on 3s, wound on 3s, -1 rend and 2 damage. He has the ability Inescapable Vengeance, meaning he gets to add 1 extra attack when he charges, and he gets to reroll save rolls of 1 for attacks that hit him thanks to the Sigmarite Thunder Shield. But wait, there's more! If you reroll your save and you're successful, each enemy unit within 3 inches takes a mortal wound. So yeah, that you could potentially kill your attacker just by making your save, because your Thunder Shield lets off a blast of energy that knocks your opponent to the ground. And of course, as he is a Lord Celestant, he has a command ability. This one called Once More for Sigmar, Charge! You get to use this ability at the start of your charge phase, and when you do, you add 3 to the charge roll for Hammers of Sigmar units within 12 inches. So, if you got really jammy and you rolled 2 6s, you add 3 to that and you have a maximum range of 15 inches to play with for your charge. Adding that 3 inches is fan-frickin-tastic, and more than makes up for the fact that he is on foot rather than riding a dragon. That is, yes, I am more than happy with that, thank you very, very much. Now we get to some mounted heroes. Starting with Asteria Soulbright, a Lord Arcanum who is searching for a way to help prevent the decrease of the souls for the Stormcaste Eternals. As I've previously mentioned, Stormcaste Eternals, whenever they die, get remade in the Soulforge. However, each time they are remade, a piece of them is missing, and they become less and less human and more, well, lightning bolt people. More primal, more, well, electric, if you pardon the pun. And so she is searching the mortal realms to find a cure, or at least to find a way to help reduce this whenever people are remade in the Soulforge after death. Asteria Soulbright is a considerable combatant, as befitting of a Lord Arcanum. With a bravery of 9, 7 wounds and 12 movement thanks to her wonderful little kitty cat Draco Lion, Khazra, she also, on top of this, has a 3-up save. Armed with the Ether Staff, meaning she has 4 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, -1 rend, and, say it with me people, D3 damage. And of course Khazra, with its monstrous claws, has 3 attacks that hit and wound on 3s, with -1 rend and 1 damage. As a Lord Arcanum, she has the ability Cycle of the Storm, meaning that once per turn, whenever a friendly Stormcast model is killed within 18 inches, she gets to bring it back with 1 wound. A wonderful way to say screw you, this model is not dying just yet. She has the standard Spirit Flasks, which, you know, we've talked about this a couple times now. It has the potential to do multiple wounds. Mortal wounds, I should say, to people who are nearby, and I personally feel it's more of a if I'm going to die I'm taking you with me kind of thing. Although you have to use it at the start of the combat phase, so make sure you do it only if you're sure you're about to snuff it. The Draco Lion's supernatural roar means that you subtract bravery from enemy models within 3 inches by 1, which is always hilarious, and Thunderous Pounce mean that on the turn you charge, your monstrous claws do D3 damage instead of the 1. But of course, a Lord Arcanum is a wizard. She can cast one spell a turn. She knows Arcane Bolt, Mystic Shield, and Lightning Pulse. And because she is a Lord Arcanum, Prime Electrids comes into play. That wonderful little ability that means that your Arcane Bolt does D3 damage instead of 1, or D6 if you get a casting roll of 10 or higher, meaning Arcane Bolt just got a hell of a lot more useful. And Lightning Pulse means that you have quite an interesting way to cause that extra mortal wound. Cast on a 5, so relatively cheap to cast, you roll a dice for each enemy unit within 12 inches. On a 5+, the unit takes a mortal wound. So yeah, just another way to dish out more mortal wounds to your poor unfortunate enemy. Well, poor unfortunate enemy. Anyway, and of course, as a Lord Arcanum, there is a command ability, Soul Energy and the First Host, and depending on what phase you use it, depends on what the effect is. In your hero phase, you get to target a unit of Hammers of Sigmar Evocators, the sword and stave wielding fellas that we talked about from the Cursebreaker warband, within 12 inches of this model. They can then cast the Empower ability for free, with no casting roll required. So yeah, pretty damn handy. That's very damn handy in fact. If you'd use this ability in your shooting phase, you target a unit of Castigators and their etheric channeling that increases accuracy or power can be used on both, making those wonderful explosive crossbows just that little bit more punchy. And finally, in the command phase, you target a unit of Secutors and they get to use etheric channeling to improve their weapons and shields, making them just that extra bit tougher and stop them from, well, taking more casualties. Asteria Soulbright is perfect in a Sacrosanct Chamber army or in a Hammer of Sigmar army, so how you use her is really up to you. But it is fantastic abilities like the Soul Energy of the First Host that just make this model really, really handy as a named character, and I'm interested to see how she'll be able to find a way to prevent Stormcast from degrading further from the effects of the Soulforge. Time will only tell. And now we get onto something a bit more flyy. Aventis Firestrike, Magister of Hammerhall, a Lord Arcanum who has decided to take up residence in the fortress city of Hammerhall, riding a mighty Talaron and using a staff with the heart of primordial fire. This enables him to channel the very power of Akshi, as well as his own considerable power in Azure. Aventis Firestrike was once a battle mage of the Agaloroxy Empire, which was thrust into battle against the Khornat hordes that overran it during the Age of Chaos. A master of the pyrokinetic arts, he sought vengeance upon the rampaging hordes, who eventually destroyed and defiled his home, meaning that when captured and near death, he was reforged as a Lord Arcanum in the Soulforge. And he has made a mighty oath that he will never let Chaos take one more city, and so has decided to take up residence in Hammerhall and prevent any further Khornat berserkers from coming through. His power over the magic of the realms of fire are partially formed from the glowing coal of anger that is lodged deep within his chest, and he is known to have a famously foul temper. A passionate but pure-hearted soul, he forged friendships with celestial creatures, including the Talaron Lothiar, who now allows him to ride upon his back. With these two together, they proved an alliance powerful enough to mean that he could overcome all but the greatest of foes. And armed with a piece of the ever-burning coal, a primordial realm stone from the realm of fire, it means he is able to cast fire spells with a proficiency that few can match. Aventis Firestrike is a fan-frickin-tastic general. And he's a Lord Arcanum on top of a Talaron. That's always going to be pretty damn tasty. 9 bravery, 10 wounds, a 14-inch movement and a 3+ save. It's good already. Staff of Hammerhall means he has 4 attacks that hit on 3s, wound on 3s, -1 rend and D3 damage. And of course, the horns and stomping hooves of his Talaron are 4 attacks that hit on 3s and wound on 3s with a -1 rend and 2 damage. Not half bad at all. Of course he can fly, because Talaron, it's a big flying lion, goat, dragon thing. I say dragon, not a dragon, but it's a big flying creature with massive teeth and horns. What more do you want? Comet Trail, with one of the fantastic Talron abilities, mean that at the end of the movement phase you pick an enemy unit that this model flew over, and well, you get to add ones to hit rolls for attacks made with missile weapons against it. So that's wonderful. It just means that it's all the easier for you to shoot down your enemy, and with Cycle of the Storm you get that wonderful ability again where you get to just stop a model from dying and put it back on 1 wound. Put a Lord Arcanum next to a Lord Celestant on a dragon and watch people get really annoyed as you bring it back once every single turn with 1 wound remaining. That could get old real fast. Meteoric Strike, thanks to Talaron, means that if you end a charge within 1 inch of an enemy model, on a 2+, they take a mortal wound. Always fantastic. And now we get to more individual traits not associated with other Lord Arcanums, but associated with Aventus, his famous anger. This ability, called Righteous Indignation, mean each time a wound is inflicted by a melee weapon against this model, on a 5+, the enemy who inflicted the wound takes a mortal wound instead. A great way to say, screw you. He of course has the Spirit Flasks again, which we've mentioned more than enough times now, but upon his head is the Thunderhead Crown. This special little headpiece taps into the power of the Anvil of Apotheosis used to create Stormcast, allowing him to renew himself even in the thick of the fight. In the hero phase, you get 1 wound back. Nice! So, if he did die, and you bring him back on 1 wound, he's now got 2 wounds, and then you could heal him up, and just annoy the hell out of people like that. And of course, he's a Lord Arcanum, so he's a wizard. He has the standard Prime Electrode, meaning that your Arcane Bolt is just that much more powerful. But he also has a wonderful ability called Pyroelectric Blast. Combining the magic of fire and lightning, he can channel it into a power so great it will melt solid stone. Casting value of 6, and if successfully cast, you pick a point on the battlefield 9 inches from the caster. You draw an imaginary 1mm line between that point and the closest part of the caster, and each unit in that line takes D3 mortal wounds. Fan-frickin-tastic. Gotta love all these mortal wounds piling up. And his command ability is Fiery Orator. Aventus Fire Strike's rousing commands can inflame the righteous fury of his followers, pushing them to even greater heights of aggression. This is not a general who likes to sit back and play general. This is someone who likes to get stuck in. Used in the combat phase, you pick a friendly Hammer of Sigmar unit within 12 inches, and you add 1 to their wound rolls for attacks. So yeah, you've now just made it even more likely you're going to wound your opponent, particularly when you think about how some weapons have got a wound on 4s, which just make it harder for your attacks to hit home. Aventus Fire Strike can just rouse them to such anger that this no longer matters, and you cause more wounds. A very, very decent general, and more than worth the points, if only for that ability to do extra wounds and that Pyroelectric Blast. And then we come to a character who truly has set the stage for Age of Sigmar. Vandus Hammerhand, a Lord Celestant of the Hammers of Sigmar. He is one of the most famous heroes in the Warrior Chambers, upon his mighty loyal Dracoth Kalanax. It was he and his original cohort of Stormcaste Eternals who made the initial strike into the realm of fire, fighting the Bloodbound to an almost complete standstill, butchering so many it was only because of the realm of Khorne opening up, causing the Bloodbound to go completely berserk, that forestalled Vandus Hammerhand, and their general, Korgoroth, who fought Vandus one-on-one, got bludgeoned to death and crushed underneath Kalanax's claws. Although, because he got drawn off into another part of the battle, he was never able to make sure the Khornate warrior stayed dead. But this isn't the only thing that made Vandus Hammerhand famous for being part of the initial foray into the mortal realms. It is thanks to Vandus Hammerhand that Gal Maraz was returned, and then placed into the hands of the Celestant Prime, who we shall get to in a moment. Thanks to Vandus Hammerhand, the Stormcaste Eternals struck an incredible blow against the Khornate warriors, and continues to serve faithfully and proudly to this day. Vandus Hammerhand has a decent profile for any Lord Celestant on a Dracoth. 9 bravery, 7 wounds, 10-inch move and 3-up save, and his wonderful little Warhammer. Little Warhammer. It's a 2-handed beast. Heldensen. 3 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s, -1 rend and 3 flat damage means that this is going to pulverize most things. And Kalanax's claws, with 4 attacks hitting on 3s and wounding on 3s with a -1 rend and 1 damage, means he's going to follow up that vengeful strike with the hammer quite happily. Helden Sen is extra special because he gets to add D3 attacks with this wonderful hammer whenever he makes a charge move. And the intolerable damage, thanks to Kalanax's eager claws, mean that any unmodified wound roll of a 6 becomes D6 damage instead. Which is, good grace, oh, that's so wonderful. And of course, there is the wonderful Storm Breath. Pick a point on the battlefield within 12 inches of Kalanax, you roll a dice, and every enemy unit within 2 inches of that point, on a 4+ takes D3 mortal wounds. Ouch, lightning breath attacks to the face. Lord of the Hammerhands ability means that Vandus is considered a mighty champion of the Hammers of Sigmar and one of its most famous commanders because of this. All friendly Hammer of Sigmar units within 24 inches don't take battle shock tests. That is fantastic. That is a fantastic ability. Yes, an ability, not a command ability. He can pull this off all the time. Now you have his command ability, Vengeful Determination. Used in the combat phase, you get to add 1 to the attack characteristic of melee weapons for all Hammers of Sigmar units within 12 inches. That is fan-frickin-tastic. Vandus Hammerhand is, in my opinion, for a truly stompy army, a must. Vandus will bludgeon, break, and crush, whilst Kalanax claws, bites, and breathes all over them. And yeah, not much is going to be left. But if you want just a little bit more killing power, then there is only one more named character for us to look at. The Celestant Prime. Rumoured to be the very first Stormcaste Eternal to be created by Sigmar. However, when he was created, he did not move. He was immobile, asleep, slumbering. And for some reason, no matter what Sigmar did, he could not wake him. That is until Gal Maraz, the Hammer of Sigmar, was placed in his hands. And then his eyes lit up, and he awoke, and has been smacking his way through things ever since. The Celestant Prime has already bested some of the greatest Chaos champions that the Mortal Realms has to offer, and just made mincemeat of greater demons, Chaos Warlords. Doesn't matter, the Celestant Prime is going to flatten most things. With a bravery of 10, 9 wounds, a 12-inch move and a 3-up save, that is going to be very respectable. Gal Maraz, the Hammer of Sigmar, has 3 attacks that hit on 3s, wound on 2s, -3 rend and 3 damage. And his Comet Strike Scepter, the wonderful staff he has in the other hand, allows him to bring comets raining down on people. You pick a point on the battlefield within 24 inches, and each unit within D6 inches of that point take D3 mortal wounds, because the Celestant Prime is just taking rocks out of the ether and throwing them from heaven. Bearer of the Warhammer means that all Order units get +1 bravery, and that's all Order units, including your allies if you choose to ally them in, so that is a pretty fantastic ability. Ori of the Celestial Fates mean that once per turn you can change the result of a dice roll. This can mean you can auto-hit with an attack, auto-wound with an attack, automatically make a save, automatically change a run roll, change a charge roll, or change the number of mortal wounds you do with the Comet Strike Scepter. That's cheesy, wonderfully so, but suiting for a Celestant Prime, considering that the wonderful energies he wields allow him to partially see into the future, making him more likely to survive these kinds of crazy things. But it is the last ability we will talk about that make him truly special. Retribution from on high. The Celestant Prime is famous from diving from the realm of heaven and landing smack bang in the middle of an enemy force with thunderous impact. What you do is you don't set him up on your first turn, and you keep him in reserve, saying he will strike from the heavens, and because of this he adds 2 to the attack characteristics of Galmaraz. So now you have 5 attacks to play with, meaning you have a potential damage output of 15. And on top of this, when he strikes from the heavens, you deploy him 9 inches away from enemy units, and this also means that the enemies subtract 2 from their bravery when they're within 12 of him, because he's just landed out of the sky in a ball of glorious light and fire, and he's understandably making people feel a bit nervous. There are a lot of rumours about who the Celestant Prime was. It is said that he was once a great king of men. I have personally wondered whether this could be Karl Franz. It would in a way be fitting for Karl Franz to be revived as such, considering the service he did in the old world for Sigmar. But we shall just have to wait and see. Anyway, that is all the named characters from the Stormcaste Eternal Battle Tome. I hope you all enjoy this video. I'm sorry if this one feels a bit quick. I've had nothing but internet issues all day today, and yeah, this has meant that I've had to do this at kind of a rushed pace, more than I'd want to. But I will be going on holiday next week, and because of this I'm going to make a couple Let's Play videos. Probably going to be Total War Warhammer or Mordheim, because, well, it's Warhammer related and they're the games I have. What would you like to see? Is there any particular army you'd like to watch me play? Put a little like and comment down below. In any case, I hope you're having a great week and staying cool in this wonderfully hot weather we're having. And I look forward to hearing from you all soon. Take care, everyone.